Cold and hot in Revelation 3 verses 15 and 16 has been interpreted in a variety of different ways. Today I simply want to add my addition to the interpretation of the word cold as well as hot. Normally, when you read any commentary or you listen to anyone explain hot or cold, normally the statement is that the hot are the ones who are for Christ, they are the believers. The ones that are cold are the opposite of that, which means they are contrary against Christ as much as possibly visible on the scale. And of course the lukewarm are the ones that are somewhere in between, they're not quite sure what to do, and therefore Christ will vomit them out of their mouth. Those interpretations are vast. So I want us to read very carefully the passage, especially verse 15 of Revelation 3, because it gives us something I believe very valuable in interpreting the word cold and hot. So I want us to read, we'll read verse 15 and 16, and then we'll consider the Greek as well because it is important for us. Verse 15 says the following, "I know your works, that you are neither cold nor hot. I could wish you were cold or hot. So then, because you are lukewarm, and neither cold nor hot, I will vomit you out of my mouth." Now, when we look at this structure of the actual message, he says, "I could wish." Now, what is this that he's saying, "I could wish"? In the Greek, it looks as the word ophelon. Ophelon is a word which donates "I want to" or "I would like to." There's a wish being placed. It does not mean that something will happen or it may not happen. So there's no outcome stated. It's an optative form, or it's expressed in an optative form, the word eis, which means you are. So you are either cold or zestos, hot. Now, he wishes that we were either one. So the question is, if Christ wishes for us to be either cold or hot, and if these two are opposite of one another, then we have a major issue, a major problem. That's because Christ is actually saying, "I wish you were hot for me," or "I wish you were cold and fully against me." In that kind of interpretation, the logic would follow that Christ actually wants some people to be saved and some others he just doesn't want to be saved. So here is a dilemma, I believe, in Christ's words to interpret the word cold and hot as opposites. Now, what if we take those two words and place them in a meaning side by side? In other words, they are synonymous of one another. Let me explain how this possibly could work. Christ says that he is the fountain of living water. Now we know that from fountain we get cold water. This is cold water which is actually unbiased. This is water that is unpolluted by all the different philosophies and theologies. So it is in its purest form. We know that in Laodicea the water would travel in the aqueducts and would become lukewarm. And then, because of its lukewarm state, it was actually poisonous to drink. So the Laodiceans would have a filtering system as well as boiling system to make sure that that water would be boiled out so that all the bacteria, all the heavy metals, all the nastiness that was in that water was eliminated. Now, I believe when Christ says, "I wish you were either cold or hot," he means the very same, because the cold is the one who has not been polluted by false theologies, by false doctrines. Daniel chapter 7 as well as chapter 8 clearly tells us that the little horn will try to masquerade the true gospel. He will pervert the true gospel. He will present it in different light. He will pervert it. He will change it. He will tweak it to fit his own scheme. However, those who believe in the original gospel are the ones who are cold. Yet the ones afterwards, after the process of purification, where they are boiled out, these come back to the purity of the gospel. In other words, they have to now filter all this rubbish that has been presented into that gospel as part of that gospel, but originally it was not so. It is simply just an influence of the little horn impacting the truth and darkening the truth and making the truth not visible. He's camouflaging it so that people will not drink the purest of water. So now when they are purified in Laodicea, when they are hot again, they have left all the impurities behind and they have just the water. And I believe here is the understanding, and I think it fits better when Christ says, I could wish, or I wish, or I would like for you to be either cold or hot. This way, we actually preserve Christ's words as authoritative, stating that He wants us to be one or the other. And if He wants us to be one or the other, then both have to be good. Both would have to be of original state where Christ wants us to be. On the opposite, lukewarm has its own category, because that lukewarm water are those who are polluted with a falsehood gospel, with a gospel that is mixed with other philosophies, human interpretations, human efforts. He wants us to have the purity of that gospel. When we look, therefore, at Revelation and we consider Christ's words, we must take them seriously, because otherwise we may have to logically state that Christ wants some of us to be unsaved, and that is simply not the good news of Christ. So, just to sum it up again, I believe that the cold and the hot are the same. One is before the pollution of the gospel, the other one is after the pollution of the gospel, but he is now purified. Lukewarm are the ones who are simply away from Christ. They have decided to keep the impurities within themselves, and therefore we preserve overall structure of the book, which divides people only in two categories: saved and unsaved, sealed and unsealed. This is the message of Revelation. There are only two groups: the group that believe and the ones who don't. Thank you for your attention. This is Arthur for Intrinsic Truth. Blessings.